hosting a table of sharing, a collaboration between the education faculty led by Madam Executive Dean, Dr. Puleng, and Dr. Sindiwe Magona, a young academic who is so passionate about issues of power and social relationships in women in society. We are gathered under the theme, "To My Children's Children," as the university, a university that is led by women. We applaud our university on that. We are having a conversation that we are sharing to the world, because this seminar is not only seen nationally, we have guests from everywhere. The table of sharing that we are having is about sharing the vision that the Faculty of Education and the Center for Gender and Women's Studies have come about. It's a vision of sharing stories that can be passed on to the next generation. Since we are not now able to showcase our history, I have now just to show you, this is what we called a backbone in our Xhosa terminology, a term borrowed from Afrikaans. We used to sit in our rural villages around the fire with our grandmothers, eating homemade bread from this type of a container. So today, as the university, we are welcoming you to share with us, share our stories that we believe that we are the ones who are able to tell our stories in our time, so that the younger generation can learn, as we were told in Somi in the evenings. The setup is perfect. You are all seated around in the evening. Now come and share with us as we converse. In those words, I would like you, ladies and gentlemen, to welcome our Madam Vice Principal. Our principal is Professor. Our Professor Mutwa is a well-known academic who has led the university towards a vision 2030. And the message is around sustainability. And one of the themes, definitely, which are centered in that vision is the storytelling, our social sustainability, our capacity building amongst the young and old, as the university extends a hand to other stakeholders. In those few words, let us please welcome our Vice Principal, our Vice Chancellor. You know, as you come from a setup of a school, the term that says principal comes quickly, but let us put it clearly that this is our VC, the main lady who is leading the institution. Thank you once more. Welcome, Prof. Mutwa. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Ayanda, for those kind words of welcome. Thank you very much, colleagues, this afternoon, just a day before an important day in the history of our country, Youth Day as it has come to be known, but it is a day that comes from a very painful and a real history which we should not forget. So thank you very much. It is my real pleasure and honor to welcome you to Nelson Mandela this evening. Good evening, colleagues, the friends of our university, our staff, Ngokubanzi, wonke umuntu okhoyo oze apha this evening, our students, the community members. We are an outward-facing university, and we intend to stay that way. And we want to welcome everyone who is watching via various online platforms in these times that we are now in. In her absence, I would like to acknowledge our Chancellor of Nelson Mandela University, Dr. Geraldine Fraser-Muleketi, who is our rock and support all the time. I would like to also like to acknowledge our chairperson of council, Ambassador Nozipho January Badil, who is a major support and a feature and an emblem really of our university. And the members of the Nelson Mandela Council that are here in attendance this evening. I would like to recognize the academics that are among us and all the other colleagues that are in this function this evening in this event. The university management and including the leadership of the university, the deputy vice chancellors, I know they are on the platforms, the dean of faculties, the heads of entities. I want to acknowledge in particular the dean, the executive dean of the Faculty of Education, who is co-hosting this evening, Dr. Muki Mueng. I would also like to take the opportunity to acknowledge Dr. Gcina Mhlophe, who needs no introduction, who was awarded the Nelson Mandela University Honorary Doctorate in 2018 for her outstanding service to humanity through her craft. I'm also informed that we are joined here this evening by the director of the Albert Luthuli Museum, Mr. Brian Kaba. Welcome, Mr. Kaba. I understand that Dr. Mhlophe and Mr. Kaba and our other guests are joining us virtually for this conversation. You are all welcome. So participants, staff, and students who are watching across all social media platforms, I welcome you all near and far. I particularly, though, for this evening, would like to welcome our guests of the night of this evening, Dr. Sindiwe Magona and Professor Puleng Segalo. It is with great excitement and anticipation that I welcome you both at Nelson Mandela University this evening. I would like to congratulate our Faculty of Education under the Executive Dean, Dr. Mueng, and the Center for Women and Gender Studies under the leadership of Dr. Babalo Makokwana in organizing this exciting conversation. As the conversation is themed by Dr. Sindiwe Magona's first novel, To My Children's Children, this conversation has significance for us in that it is taking place at Mandela University at this moment. In 2020, we're extremely humbled to be able to honor Dr. Sindiwe Magona with an honorary doctorate in recognition of her radical and expansive body of work and particular focus on education in general and on children's education in particular. With over 40 years of writing, it is safe to say that Dr. Magona is a living archive, and she is well known for the different generations she has written for and written about. At her advanced level of her career and of her life experience, this conversation between her and the scholar who could qualify to be her daughter, Professor Puleng Segalo, is symbolic of intergenerational transferal of knowledge and of knowing. Professor Segalo has recently been awarded a Chief Albert Luthuli Research Chair by UNISA. And for me, this is telling of the rich intellectual lineage of knowledge and generational wealth we possess in our communities and institutions. I would like to congratulate you, Puleng, for the honor of this chair, to which we are looking forward to be collaborating with going into the future. The Nelson Mandela University is committed to making its contribution to a transformative and humanizing nation through courageous conversations and scholarship. Key to our approaches includes centering women's voices and women's ways of knowing. To this end, in 2019, we launched this Center for Women and Gender Studies, of which I'm extremely and exceptionally proud. The center continues to promote intergenerational conversations that center the storytelling as part of the knowledge transfer project. Both the faculty and the center contribute to a lineage of the university's commitment to ways of knowing and of connecting different generations. Connecting different generations through her book, my children's children, Magona asks, how will you know who you are if I do not or cannot tell you the story of your past? And indeed, I want to congratulate Dr. Magona on her reception speech when she received her doctoral degree recently. It was quite moving and quite something for the young people that she addressed that afternoon. As this question, I think, then is a challenge for all scholars, teachers, and parents, those that are joining us tonight, but those teachers, scholars, and parents at large. Asking ourselves this question might in fact bring us closer to designing tools that can sustain the story of our past, but equally serve to commit to a future that is radically different and one that values women's knowledges, which is what we are striving towards and which is still a dream that has been still deferred. The acknowledgement of women's knowledges is central in our national considerations and conversations around violence against women and children in particular. We are therefore honored to be joined by this academic doyen and elder. This conversation is critical to our work of revitalization of humanities project, which is central to our direction here at Mandela. So with those few words, colleagues, I want to take this opportunity to welcome you to this event this evening and thank you for participating. And we are looking forward to quite an exceptionally exciting evening of conversation and dialogue. Thank you very much, colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Busi Ngosi Siabulela. With those words now, we're going to move on to our Madam Dean, the Executive Dean for the Faculty of Education, Dr. Muki Puleng. She is a well-known scholar on her own right. You will find one link in her writings, particularly in print media and even electronic. She is wearing a critical paradigm lens, and you will find her citing Paulo Freire. Over to you, my Executive Dean. I'm handing over to you to welcome the other guests. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ayanda. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Madam Vice Chancellor, all protocol observed, but in particular, I would like to welcome the Faculty of Education colleagues and the colleagues from the Center for Women and Gender Studies, schools and school children who are here, African friends from the African continent and the diaspora, delegates from the French Embassy, the representative from the NIHSS, ladies and gentlemen. It is my singular privilege to be introducing these phenomenal women scholars to you today. The Faculty of Education and the Center for Women and Gender Studies are very excited to be hosting this conversation. When Prof. Segalo shared her article about her analysis of Dr. Magona's writings, I immediately saw an opportunity to bring the two together in a conversation. When I listened to Dr. Magona's honorary doctorate acceptance speech last year, I found so much wisdom in it. And when this opportunity presented itself, I made sure that we do not miss it. This conversation has been intentionally scheduled to take place during the Youth Month in order to generate conversations beyond this conversation. Through this, we intend to build meaningful partnerships, associations, and collaborations with our honorary doctorates, professional and research associates. Now about Dr. Sindiwe Magona. She was born in 1943 in the rural Eastern Cape, but grew up in Cape Town. The challenges of her early life were captured in her autobiography, To My Children's Children, in which her resourcefulness and resilience as a young mother became evident. Parallel with her writing, she also worked as a primary school teacher, a novelist, poet, civil servant, and language activist, whose writing has been published and recognized across the world. In addition to her breakthrough autobiographical writing, she has written novels such as Mother to Mother, which was prompted by the death of Amy Bill in 1993 and is now prescribed high school text. This book has been translated into French and will be launched in France from the 17th to the 25th of June, 2021. Throughout her lifetime, she has received numerous awards, including the Order of Ikamanga in bronze from President Zuma in 2011 for her literary and humanitarian contribution. Magona is the recipient of numerous awards, including the Molteno Gold Medal for Lifetime Achievement for her role in promoting isiXhosa, and the Department of Arts and Culture Literary Lifetime Achievement Award, both received in 2007. The Bronx recognizes its own fiction award in 2000, a fellowship for nonfiction from the New York Foundation of the Arts, the Xhosa Heroes Award, and the Undimande Grade Prize. She has eminent associations with universities in South Africa and abroad. The Hartwick College of New York conferred her with an honorary doctorate in 1993. The University of the Western Cape has created the Sindiwe Magona Literary Award in honor of Magona's work. Furthermore, she was awarded an honorary doctorate by Rhodes University in 2018 and by Nelson Mandela University in 2020. Dr. Sindiwe Magona is a graduate of Columbia University and the official biographer of Archbishop Njongonkulu Ndungane. She is an author, poet, playwright, storyteller, actor, and inspirational speaker. Magona retired from the United Nations, where she worked in the anti-apartheid radio program until June 1994, and the UN Film Archives till her retirement from the organization at the end of 2003. After 25 years in New York, she relocated to her home country, South Africa, and is currently a writer in residence at the University of the Western Cape. Magona has written over 100 children's books, and 40 are available in all 11 official languages. She's considered one of the leading children's writers in the African continent. Wow. Now to Prof. Puleng Segalo. Professor Puleng Segalo is the Chief Luthuli Research Chair and a professor of social and community psychology at the University of South Africa. She holds 2 master's degrees from UNISA and the Graduate Center, City University of New York. She also holds an award-winning doctoral degree in psychology from the Graduate Center, City University of New York. She further holds a doctoral certificate in women's studies from the same university. Her PhD was awarded Kunja Mitchell Prize, and she was later awarded the UNISA Principal Prize for Excellence in Research. She is also a recipient of the National Department of Science Award for the 2014 Young Women Scientists of the Year. Her areas of specialization include community psychology, social psychology, and gender and feminism in psychology. Her research work and publications cover a wide range of areas, including gendered experiences of women in various aspects of life, historical trauma, critical participatory research practices, and knowledge production and decolonization. She is a member of the South African Young Academy of Sciences and the current president of the Forum of African Psychology. Prof. Segalo is also an NRF-rated scholar and a community activist scholar passionate about social justice. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
At this stage, we would like to welcome Prof. Puleng and Dr. Magona so that they can proceed with the conversation. Thank you very much, Dr. Mukimu, for the introduction.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Madam Program Director, the VC and Vice Chancellor of the University, Professor Mutwa, the Executive Dean of the Faculty of Education, Dr. Moeng, and I would also like to acknowledge Dr. Babalwa Magona, and all the distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, joining us this evening. I would like to start with a reflection and briefly speak to how I came to Dr. Magona's works. As a psychology scholar, interested in historical trauma, in memory, in remembering, and intergenerational legacies, I found Dr. Magona's work very useful for my scholarly quests and also curiosities that I have. In particular, her book that we're going to be focusing on tonight, To My Children's Children. In this book, Dr. Magona skillfully writes her life story, and she does this as a way of speaking to both the past and the envisaged future. Through her telling, she shows how bodies remember. She suggests that when her grandchildren's body remember, they will, through her story, know what their past entailed. The hurts and humiliation experienced by the oppressed can be felt and seen in the lives of their descendants through generations. These are the intersections of suffering. And in this autobiography, you are, however, quick to remind us, Dr. Magona, that it is not just the suffering that can be passed on from one generation to another, but also resilience, love, compassion, and hope. South Africa, like many other countries, continues to redefine and reinvent itself. Because it is a country with a very dark and complicated past, this redefinition requires a collective effort. The call and hope for nation building and social cohesion remains a dream that is still to be realized within a country fraught with multiple challenges. Through self-storying and reflections of the past, many people attempt to make sense of the past while wrestling with the present and imagining a possible future. Dr. Magona's autobiography is an attempt to achieve this reimagining. Her work offers us an avenue for reflection, for remembering, for reimagining, and for dreaming. So she not only engages the challenges and negativity, but also reflects on the need to have hope and remain resilient. It is with this brief reflection, therefore, ladies and gentlemen, that I turn to you, Dr. Magona, and say it is my absolute honor to be in conversation with you tonight, Mama. Ndicela uqala ngokubulisa ngesintu. Molo, Mama Magona. Molo, Mama.
Molo sisi, ndiyabulisa uxolo. I had to unmute myself. Somebody, no, never mind. I'm back.
Okay.
Ndizwa manje.
Uphilile, Mama?
Ndiphilile, enkosi sisi, unjani wena?
Ndiphilile namakhonto, enkosi kakhulu. I'm really, really delighted to be in this conversation with you tonight. And I would like us to start with who Sindiwe Magona is. You've said in our previous conversation that you consider yourself, you are a World War II child, the one who lived during World War II, the one who lived during apartheid. So the telling of your story is not through something that you've heard, but something that you've lived. You were there pre, during, and are here after apartheid. So I would just like you to take us through that experience of growing up during these moments in our lives. Ubani uSindiwe Magona? Who is she?
Thank you, and really thank you to the university and these officials, all protocol observed. But thank you, Puleng, for taking my work seriously. It is work that I do and cherish, but it is work for which I am not trained and singularly unprepared. You know, people do as people do, but when one has no ancestors in that path, when you cannot tell yourself you are following so and so's footsteps, you are really fumbling. So it's quite astounding to me that people at your level of education and accomplishment take me seriously, and I'm honored. And I am grateful because it means whatever it is I feel, because I write from a sense of obligation, a sense of indebtedness to the life I have. For far too long, people like me, and I've done this too, will say, I'm not educated enough, I'm not prepared enough, I'm not trained enough. You know, this feeling of not only being ill-prepared, but being inadequate, this feeling of littleness, we have been trained to expect so little of ourselves. So when one dares do something, despite the fact that one feels ill-prepared, and somebody else affirms that, it is really important. So what you do in these corridors of excellence and education is important to people in the village South Africa. Those who will never get to university will, through forums such as this. When you take what we do as little people, take it seriously, that affirmation goes a long way. And my one accomplishment, if one can call it that, is the long life I have lived. Really and truly, for me to be looking at 80, in 2 years' time, I'll be 80. Then you say to yourself, well, there must be something I can do with this, because why have I been blessed with this kind of longevity? You know, humanity, we come to the world with absolutely no knowledge. All we know, all we will ever know, has been passed down to us by the preceding generation. And therefore it falls on us to pass it on to my children's children. Was a book I wrote out of that sense of obligation, not to my biological offspring, no, but to the children of the future. In fact, when I wrote that, I had no idea people would read that book and look me in the eye and say, you did that, that happened to you, which is in a way why the book is so frank. But I knew from what little I had garnered from the books, history books, sociology, psychology, anthropology, I would meet me in those books. And sometimes I would wonder how that writer came to depict me like that, because I did not recognize the me that was shown in that history book. And sometimes I would come across a phrase and I was, oh yeah, I recognize that. And sometimes I would come across something, a statistic, and I would be outraged. And so I realized that those among us who can stitch together 5 or 6 or 10 sentences, not that you are writing to be who have been writing and their parents wrote and their grandparents wrote, no, but I am giving to the next generation what I know, what I received from my parents and grandparents. Because now, even in Africa, we are said to be people who pass down our history through storytelling. That is still there, but it has changed. And now most of the storytelling has to happen this way, which is what I say to my children's children. Now that I will not be sitting around the fire of an evening talking to the children of the village, not just my grandchildren, but the grandchildren of the extended family. This is not happening. You know, the extended family has changed, and the way people live has changed. We have left the village, flocked to the urban centers, and we live in smaller units. But that does not mean, in fact, it means that our obligation increases precisely because our lifestyle has changed, and this passage, this giving over has to be done this way. And one has to acknowledge that and act with a sense of urgency, because things have changed, and mostly not for the better for the child who looks like me. You know, parenthood is in jeopardy. Fatherhood has almost disappeared. And we need to call this out and say, no, 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 Africa, you cannot go on like this. You know, this is what it used to be like. Yes, it has to change, but we also have to look at the why of it. Why did we do things this way? Now that our lifestyle has changed, what was good about this, and how can we engage it in this new way of living? Parents and parenthood will always be important. Will always be important. There's no running away from that. Childhood is, you know, the essence of being human, coming into the world. It has to be nurtured. It has to be, you know, nurtured in a particular way. How do we nurture children today?
Indeed.
That is why I write.
Indeed, Mama, indeed. You've said something very powerful, that you decided to tell your story, because in all the books that you came across, there was no recognition of self. So you could not see yourself in what you came across, in what was, but also what was written about you. The story that was told about you did not represent who you are. It was not about who you are. And what a gift your work has been in this regard. And you've indicated very critical things about society today, but in particular the family and challenges that we're experiencing in the family. And you indicated that your writing is both a revelation and testimony. So through your work, you reveal their experiences, you reveal what's going on around, but it's also testimony. And so I want us to maybe pause a little bit and speak about that, and for you to expand on what role do you see your work serving as a reflection in our society today? In what way is it a revelation, and how would you like it to be testimony for all of us?
Revelation in the way it says, this is how it was for an ordinary human being such as I am. Because in history, you will read about what happened to the king, what happened to the queen, what happened during war, which is good. But most people are not kings and queens and do not, you know, they are ordinary. And for a long time, I did not realize the value of depicting an ordinary life. But as I grew older and as my life changed somewhat, I began to realize that even during my life, to some of South Africa, I shouldn't say most, to some people in South Africa, the life I lived was something they couldn't fathom. It was an amazing thing for me in the mid-80s, early 80s, mid-80s, before I left South Africa, to realize that a lot of people who were not classified Bantu, as I was, had no idea of what it meant to be labeled Bantu, what it meant to have to carry a pass, what even those different designations of, designations of within the pass, 10-1A is different to 10-1B, 10-1C, 10-1D. Even among Africans, most people didn't realize that, to say nothing of our children's children. These are the things, the divisions among us because of that designation. Uhlekwe, you would be laughed at by a 10-1A, or you came by bus to Cape Town because you're 10-1B. And when at 10-1B, you feel superior to the 10-1C, who will never qualify for permanent residence in the designated area of the Western Cape. I mean, such things, the way our personhood, our Ubuntu was tattered by IPAS, just IPAS Lord. And then claims the things like, you marry somebody who will never qualify to live in Cape Town. What does that mean? And this is the testimony, the revelation, Ukuti, this is how we were forced to live. But despite that, we had parents who took their role seriously. And I feel this is something we need to remember, that circumstances, however adverse they may be, do not determine ultimately who you can be. Untu has something inside you that you are born with, that you strive to overcome. You strive to overcome. It doesn't mean you belittle your suffering. You say, despite this, I will summon something inside me. You do it alone, but usually you have help to become the you were meant to be. The universe is not wasteful. You are here for a reason. The call to everybody in our village, South Africa, is to become, fight to become holy who you were meant to be. This waste of human potential, this waste of children who are not given the support, even in school. Even today, almost 30 years after we said apartheid died, who can teach 50 children every day and not go local? How do we come to so belittle our children that schools, you go to something called a school today and it is worse than during apartheid? Come on, guys. We need to do better for our children, because that's where life starts. And if they lose out in childhood, by the time they come to university, they are hopelessly behind. In fact, when our children from the village and the townships go to grade 1, they are already hopelessly behind. Those children in other communities here in South Africa who have parents who are alert and aware and engaged. We must revive and revitalize. We must find a way of making parenting as a village, because the biological parenting is failing. I know that, you know that. What about those children?
Yeah. No, Takuva Mama, and you are so spot on. And I think you've touched on so many things. The power of telling the story of the ordinary person in South Africa. And again, I think this speaks to what you were saying at the beginning, that if we don't know where we come from, how can we know where we are going? right? So some of the histories that continue to be hidden, which really become a challenge. So when we're thinking about our education system, and it's not only just about the infrastructure, but the very education itself, what is it that is being taught at the school? How do very exhausted, hungry children focus and concentrate in class? The role of education in your work, more broadly, I think is something very powerful. And education in particular is very close to your heart. I think what you just said also speaks to that. As a teacher yourself, growing up in the heart of apartheid, you bore witness to these loud silences about what education meant for Black communities. You saw the Bantu education of 1953 in action. So, and that sought to ensure that Black people remained poorly educated and barely literate, so that they would be dependent on whites for survival, for employment, for their overall livelihood, right? So one of the powerful moments for me in the book with regard to education is when you mention that people often do not know about their poverty until the system they live or exist under lays it bare in front of them, right? So obtaining the education in the hope of changing the world was something of an impossible task for many Black people during apartheid, as their destinies were predetermined. They were to be servants, that's it. And that's what the Bantu education aimed to do. So we are in a significant month now, Mama, in South Africa, where we remember young people of 1976 who were brutally slaughtered by the apartheid police because they dared to demand equality education. And so I was wondering if maybe you might want to add a few thoughts on this when it comes to the role of education in our society today. I think you started touching on that, but maybe just elaborate a bit on education and its role in our society today.
Thank you for that question. One cannot overestimate the importance of education in one's life, in a child's life, or in anybody's life. But children are the most vulnerable among us because they are still becoming. We never stop becoming. We should never stop learning. But, you know, children come ready. It is up to the parenting generation. They come to the village. You know, it takes a village to raise a child. That means both the academic, pursuit, but also education in terms of becoming umuntu, becoming a human being, learning to behave in certain ways, not doing this, doing what is encouraged and what is not encouraged. I grew up in the 40s and 50s. I am used, even as a child, I knew of the struggle, or Mamusi Sulu, or Mamu or Tamane, women rallying together and women coming together. When Mamu Tamane in retreat were marching, there were people like Ray Alexander Simons, also there, Jewish, Ufele, white, but there. And that what for me as a child was the lesson, was that together, people who see things the same, we are stronger. We need to find like-minded people who are concerned about the plight of childhood in South Africa. This is something that really is at crisis levels. If we don't see that this is a crisis, then something is wrong with us as a nation. This is a crisis that is in a way similar to what was addressed by the youth of 1976, where bodily, physically, you are supposed to be in school, but the system is such that you are being processed towards perpetual inferiority. You are being processed towards failure as a human being. This is precisely what is happening today. No child who is living with a single parent or a grandmother and depends on a grant, and I'm not saying the grant is a bad thing. Please don't get me wrong. Inadequate is what I'm saying. We need to address this, the plight of this child who has no nurturing and comes to school and gets up to matric. And these are stories I hear even today. Somebody KwaZulu, who the photographer, the famous photographer, Zanele Muholi, talks to me this morning. Unento ayenzayo KwaZulu Natal, uthi nakumntwana uku grade 11 can't write the word education. Guys, I mean, what is happening to us? Umntana can't fail as a one more than once, even if that child does not belong to that level. You can't fail a child twice. Go on, go on, go on. We are processing. The education of children is something we need to sit down with our hearts and our minds. Really, as a nation, as parents and grandparents, there must be a way. Ayiko inkinge that has no isisombululo. No, there is no problem that faces humanity that has no solution. And I want to think Village South Africa has somewhere there among the villagers that can sit together. And without blame, I'm not about blame, and I'm not about bad history. We know what happened 100 years ago and 50 years ago and 30 years ago. What is happening now? And what can we do about it that mends the brokenness now? History is fine to assess, but the pressing urgency is, what do we do now? You see a big-bellied child, young person, young lady, at one of the shops when I used to do grocery shopping before COVID. And you've just read a scintillating article about the importance of the first 1,000 days in a child's life. You see this young mama to be, being me. I see you have a young one coming. Are you reading to this young one? The person looks at you as if you are crazy. You try to explain, other mothers are reading for them. You must sing to them. But isn't this something that the nation should have found a way, these young women, mothers, to go to clinics? This is not a secret you are going to have a child. The nation should remember the importance of the first 1,000 days in a child's life, the importance of what should be happening to the baby in utero. We should be addressing it because that child is ours in community. Why do we neglect our duty? The duty that the youth of 1976 was fighting for, to live holistic lives, to have a life that is worth living. That's what everybody wants, a life worth living. But if you don't have a map, if nobody in your family or in the immediate surroundings has walked those steps, who are you going to follow? If you don't know about the importance of the first 1,000 days of a child's life, what are you doing? Nothing that is relevant. But Nina, in universities that you know, what is the use of all this knowledge if it has no impact on the child who is going to be born by a 12-year-old, a 13-year-old? My latest book, When the Village Sleeps, thanks to the NIHSS, is part of my thesis towards a, don't laugh, I can see it, the laughter coming to you. I am about to complete a PhD. Look at me knocking on 80. But this, I'm done. But I needed to do this because I'm trying to say to academia, please guys, use this knowledge that you have to impact on the children of people who went as far as grade 3. When the teacher say, ask mama to help you with the homework, and mama says, who is getting the check at the end of the month? And this child is supposed to be in school with the same child whose mother is. Guys, we need to know who we are, what we have come through, and therefore the redress we need to make, never mind the redress other people need, we need to make in our own lives and in the lives of people who look like us. We didn't go through all this suffering for nothing. It is so that we remember it, and we remember the steps we took to salvage our own little lives and see if we cannot help others salvage their lives. This is the whole point of being alive. Learning, and then from what you've learned, giving knowledge. It's not great knowledge, but if it helped me, it might help someone else.
Indeed, Ma, you really said a mouthful. And I think what I take from what you're saying is the importance of the collective effort of all of us as a community. And what you said about going back to our villages, to our communities, and saying, what resources do we have? What knowledges do we have? Because as Uchoba, umntana, a child, does not just belong to an individual, but the child belongs to the community. So what becomes of that child tomorrow is a responsibility of all of us. And whether the child ends up doing good for society or they end up doing bad for society, it's a collective responsibility that we all have.
Thank you. You've got it. And why aren't we so eager to have children who will be of benefit to all of us? It's what we plant in those children that we will reap. And if we leave them to the vagaries of poverty, what hope do we have for the future? Not only their future will have a direct impact on our future.
Indeed. And that's where the intergenerational legacies come in, don't they? So the past and what we're doing today will also determine the future. So it's an intergenerational legacy that we are creating. So it's therefore important to think about the work that we're doing right now and the contribution that we would like this work to make. And I'm proud and I'm happy about the work that you're doing right now. And I'm excited and looking forward to more contributions that you continue making in society, Mama Magona. And you know, very proud of that. And it's really, at this age, but I don't think at any age, as you're saying, we are constantly becoming. As I am, we are always in the process of becoming. And while we are doing that, what difference are we making in society? What contribution are we making?
Learning is a lifelong process. And until one breath is one's last, one should try and learn something new.
No, indeed, man. I would like to speak a little bit about the role of language in your works, because I think you're one of the scholars who very take seriously our African languages, also called indigenous languages. You've chosen to write some of your works in isiXhosa. You know, we have our constitution, as you know, that highlights the importance of all languages. We step outside South Africa, there are other African scholars like Ngugi wa Thiong'o who have really highlighted, but why have we become so obsessed by taking, from our mother tongue to enrich other tongues? Why should an African writer or any writer become so obsessed with this? And when in your works, you also center African languages, you center isiXhosa. And why is it important for you? And why is it important for us to do so?
It's important because language is you. It's an important aspect of who you are. You can't say Jingumxhosa and speak no Xhosa. Really, it's a strange thing. When I returned to South Africa and found that among the choices young people have is choice of mother tongue. You can go to school and you can choose mother tongue. That to me is like, how do you choose mother tongue? What next? Are we going to be choosing skin color? Mother tongue, science says, is the language the baby, the sounds of which the baby hears while still in the mother's womb. And when a child is born, they have in their brain the mechanism to learn any language, but they are most predisposed to the language they learn, they recognize from when they were in mama's tummy. So that's why it's called mother tongue. I write in mother tongue, but I don't have a lot of support. Ngugi wa Thiong'o writes in Kikuyu, but as he is writing in Kikuyu, there are dozens of people translating him into other languages.
Mm.
Who is going to be translating Sindiwe Magona writing in isiXhosa?
Mm.
I have books in isiXhosa that have not been published. Publishers are not keen on publishing works in mother tongue unless they can see that this links ties into the syllabus, the school syllabus, because the only market for mother tongue books is school. AmaXhosa don't want to read books in isiXhosa. AmaZulu don't want to read books in isiZulu. AmaNdebele, AmaVenda. This is who we are. And we don't see this as part of the negative indoctrination, that you don't want what is essentially you. The only language that is viable besides English for writers, the only writers in South Africa who really write and get their books are those who write in Afrikaans. You can say anything about African, but they support their language. They are very aware of the importance of language. Why we don't think this is crucial to other languages, I don't know. Mother tongue is important. And so even the books I write in English, I put smaller nyanas Xhosa there, a little bit here and little bit there, because it's important. For me, it is important.
Yeah, no, I think the issue of language is a very sore one. I think
it's a political thing. Even people who are political don't see that it is your political duty to support the publication of books in your mother tongue. No, we don't see that. Politics that go just as far as my mouth is concerned and what I can eat. What kind is that?
No, it is true. It is true. There's been talks about this for a very long time. I think it was also at the center of the move towards decolonization and Africanization. And as you say, Ndovana, language is who you are. Language is our identity. Language is how we understand the world.
Puleng, the thing is we must stop, talk, and do. I mean, there's nothing wrong with our political analysis and our political speeches, nothing. If you listen to political speeches, you would never know there was that much wrong in South Africa.
True, that is true. That action has to follow all the talk. Because
action that really translates to the transformation of lives.
No,
lives languishing in utter misery, in poverty. Poverty. You are born in poverty. You grow up in poverty. You attain adulthood in poverty. Something is wrong.
Yeah.
Something is very wrong. You can't live in poverty for 21 years.
Yeah. No, I can see, I can hear the frustration, and I think it's where we are right now as a people, as a country. The frustration that something needs to change, right? And so we've got these numerous challenges confronting South Africa, but even the continent more broadly. And we cannot imagine a socially cohesive society with the kinds of inequalities that
Okay, but Puleng, when is the meeting we are going to have in South Africa when I'm back, you and the professors there, and we come out with a proposal that is doable, that can change this 15-year-old mother and had 6 months baby, that they don't have to wait for 18 years to be free, but perhaps in 5 years, perhaps in 3 years, they can be fully functioning members of society with a hope.
I take that challenge, Mama. I take that challenge. I think one of the things OVC said in the beginning is the importance of us collaborating and looking at exactly when the village sleeps, what is it that happens to our children going forward, right?
Yes.
And I think as you're showing us the book, because I'm sure if people are listening, they'd be curious to know a bit about it. So can we talk about what is it that happens when the village sleeps?
It takes a village to raise a child. What happens to the children when the village sleeps?
They
are not raised. And then their next step is Paulsmoor prison.
Yeah.
And they get into gangs, and they get into drugs, and they get into having babies at 12. When the village sleeps, the children are not raised.
Yeah, no, indeed. And I think just linked to that, you say in the book, how will you know who you are if I do not or cannot tell you the story of your past? So, but I also want to add, how will you know who you are and what your role is in society if I don't take the responsibility?
And who you can become. How will you know who you can be, who you can become, if I don't show you that the possibility always exists?
Yes.
You know, your circumstance at birth shouldn't be your circumstance at death if it is not a circumstance that you are proud of and that is cushy. Yes, if you are born wealthy and cushy, then fine, stay there. But if you are born poor, no, don't stay there.
No, indeed. Sure. Thank you, ma'am. I'm also looking at the time as well. I think I'm going to pause shortly so that we can also open up for engagements and comments and conversations from people.
You have time for that?
Who've been listening to the conversation. I think we have a few minutes.
Okay,
but before that, guys, if maybe there's something that maybe I did not raise that you also wanted to share before I give back to our program director.
No, I'm just very grateful to the Nelson Mandela University for this honor. And of course, that comes out of the work you do. You know, to see people like you, young as you are, at the helm of ships like the one you are steering, gives me great hope. And that's what makes me go on, because it is possible. You are proof thereof.
No, indeed, ma'am. And as we're here, then we also need to play our role for those who are looking at the possibility of also changing their lives.
Yeah, but and to say, you too can be where I am. Right. Let's come up. Let's do it.
No, enkosi kakhulu, ma'am. Enkosi kakhulu. I'm really, really so honored to be in this space with you. And now I'm going to give it back to Osis Ayanda so that we can open up the space to the greater community.
Thank you. Thank you, Puleng.
Wow, that was so passionate. Thank you so much, Mama Magona. Thank you so much, Sis Puleng. You have really broadened up our table of sharing. I can see the pain of the past and present as you are reliving the circumstances where reality was so concrete. You know, this table of sharing of today should be really a learning curve to the leaders of the country and to the younger generation. And we are so honored as the university to have such guests as you coming in our table of sharing openly what you have lived in your own time. Thank you very much. I'm now going to pose one question that has come on from the audience. The question goes to both you. You will decide who's going to respond. The question states like this: what do you think about the emergence of South African womanist consciousness and its impact on new South African women? Professor Segalo, I'll give over to you, so you will decide whether you will start first or whether Dr. Magona will step in. Can I repeat the question, perhaps?
Yes,
Okay, it's quite a longish one. What do you think about the emergence of South African womanist consciousness and its impact on new South African women? Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. All right. Mama Magona, would you like to respond? The emergence of the womanist consciousness. You are muted, ma'am.
I don't know that I understand the question properly, but if it's about the awareness of women and their rights and their sense of being, I think we are on the way. I can't say we have arrived. We are on the way there, but the younger generation is more aware of themselves and their needs, but they're up against this block of manhood, toxic manhood in South Africa. People my age who still view women as possessions and worse, as wombs. Nothing more than your womb as a woman. Your worth is your womb. And so I think, you know, the fight continues. We cannot rest because, you know, it's not a secret. The plight of women in South Africa, you know, the killing of women, the rape of women, things like that. Just a couple of days ago, as I was saying my evening, you know, whatever, I wept tears to hear of a 91-year-old woman at Tsomo raped and killed. 91 years old. Who rapes a 91-year-old? Not her age mate, the grandchild of a grandchild. The violence against women, and it starts with language. It starts with the status of women, always secondary, always second to a man, always. This has to stop. People who are having children now, stop it.
Yeah, no, thank you, Mama. I agree. I think the whole notion of the womanist consciousness, again, is as a result of a long history of women being relegated, you know, to the margins, being invisibilized, being silenced, and also, as you say, just the torture and the disregard of women's bodies, and their right to be and to be human in the world, and that has really, I think, led to a huge consciousness in terms of women speaking out, women organizing, and women just creating safe spaces and safe zones to be able to claim their rightful space in society, in the spaces that they occupy. So the level of harassment, whether at work, at home, in the streets, so all of those things, have an impact in how women look at themselves in society and redefine their space in a world that really does not regard their humanity. So I think it's really, and that is why there is, I think there's this high hypervigilance, but also this high awareness of the consciousness of the whole idea of being a womanist in this context. So yeah, I absolutely agree. It's maddening, actually.
It's very sad. It is very sad that people who look like me, skin-wise, who know what oppression feels like. You feel nothing about oppressing another person because of gender. You don't like oppression as a Black person, but it's okay when it's geared towards another Black person because they don't have what you have. What is the difference? That is why in the olden days, I couldn't belong to a political party because I didn't see that, this thing of equality among it's new. It only came around 1994. As a woman, in all the liberation movements, in all the parties, you had a secondary role. You ask anybody who's honest, they'll tell you that. Mina, I couldn't be oppressed by apartheid and then go and be oppressed by men in any group.
Exactly. And these are the intersections. So it's intersectional. So you're oppressed because of your race, you are a Black person, but also you are a woman at the same time, belonging to a particular class. So it's all these intersections of oppression.
Teachers at a high school where I was teaching, we are all saying it's wrong that white teachers and colored teachers earn more. And I said, yeah, it's wrong that you as a man and Sindiwe, you can't earn as much as I do.
Oh, yeah. So, and the fact that there is no consciousness of the problematic nature of that statement being made shows the kind of work that has to be done. That the awareness to realize that statement is problematic because we continue to experience.
This is their God-given right as men. They should earn more because they are breadwinners. I was a single parent with 3 kids. I'm still not a breadwinner.
Right. Yeah. It's a challenge.
There's a lot to do. Yes. But let's do it with joy. But let's do it boldly. Yes. Boldly. Unapologetically.
I absolutely agree. Sister Ayanda.
Thank you, Ms. Puleng. The response that you have given just now will cover the speaker. The person who posed that question was Jarina Shaikh. I think the response that you have both given will be sufficient. There are other views that I would like to share with you before I raise a question. They are commending you. We have a wonderful audience. The audience has just warmed up so much to the presentation that both of you have done. The link between the younger Professor Segalo and the matured Dr. Mama Magona, they are applauding this particular relationship that we have undertaken in the university as well. I'll just cite a few. I've got Rudolph Shaw, who's saying, the program is very profound and I'm proud of you, Sindiwe, and I'm rushing to go and buy the book. So you've got a sale already. Then I've got Violeti Seti Sonamzi, who is also saying a great program it is. The manner you have gone over to share what has happened in your own time and the link that you've got with Professor Puleng, they're saying it's good. Then I've got the last one before I move to a question, is in French. I cannot say it, but perhaps Dr. Magona will know. It is from Boy Sonia. Boy Sonia. It's in French. I cannot say it there, but I can understand that it is an applause. Then the next question that is now directed to Mama Magona. It is coming from Sihle Sigwela. She is saying, what specific role can we play as a society in not failing children? How can we not sleep as a village? Over to you, Mama Magona.
I didn't hear the last few words.
All right, let me come back again. The last sentence goes, how can we not sleep as the village?
How can we not sleep as a village?
Sleep as the village.
We must find a way. Thank you. That's actually the crux of this book. I don't have the answer, but the proposal is that we must find a way where we come together as society. Government is not society. Society should find a way to propose to government a way in which every child in South Africa is safeguarded. The welfare of every child is safeguarded so that the children are nurtured step by step, year by year. It should be possible. With today's technological advances, it should be possible that children year by year are evaluated, and there are nests where children who come from unsavory, who are born into unsavory situations are given special attention and support from when they are in utero and when they are born, so that they are not left behind. We need to nurture them.
Thank you very much, Mama Magona. There are other questions that are coming through in line again with the applaud as well. There's so much I would like to say to the audience. I just cannot capture all the good words that are coming through, who are saying, well done to you ladies.
Thank you.
Are saying, well done. They're also saying, well done to the university, to Nelson Mandela University, for initiating this particular conversation, because in this conversation, we are seeing women from two generations displaying and sharing in a conversational tone pain that happened in the past and is present. Now we are sharing these stories, and the audience coming from afar, they're saying, this is very good. I've got, for example, with me here, Namrata Day Roy. And Namrata is coming from Georgia State University in Atlanta. Georgia State University in Atlanta. I'm going to read what he's saying. He's saying, excellent talk. But he's saying, how does Dr. Magona's personal experience is explained in the book To My Children's Children? Thank you so much.
It is explained as Professor Puleng, writes about the importance of childhood, about the love and guidance I received at the hands of my parents. I did not appreciate the discipline as a child. There were instances where I would have, sold my parents and got, changed them for another set. But as a young adult, when I became a single parent, it was precisely that role modeling that came to my rescue, because I looked at my children and I thought, how can I do less for them than my parents, these two people who had no education to talk about and gave me so much? How can I do less for my children? Because I had a model of what parenting means, I needed to step up to the plate. And instead of being half parent because the other one had left, I doubled my strength to play the role of both mother and father. I used to tell my children, what would your father do? Go to work and give you food. Isn't that what I'm doing? Don't I pay the rent? Don't I pay school fees? So you do have a father. Yeah, me, I'm both your father and your mother. But the role model were my parents. So that's what I show. The happy childhood, yes, I discovered later on that we lived in poverty, not the dire poverty I see today, but we always had food on the table. Well, what table am I? There was no table. We always had food. I'm not saying nutritious food, but there was food. That kind of thing where people do the best they know how with what they have. When your heart is in the right place, you will do the right thing. And that's what we need to recapture, that let's stand up and be human beings. You know, human beings are meant to look after their children. Where there's a lapse, where there's brokenness, the larger village needs to step in, because the children, they can't do for themselves. They cannot do for themselves. And we perpetuate this brokenness by repeating the mistakes that, you are born into poverty. And because there's no guidance, sooner or later, you will bear children into the same poverty. You were oppressed or you are oppressed as a woman. You get into some position of power, let's say at the workplace. Be careful how you handle the women under you. Don't become an oppressor. You are a mother-in-law. You got grief from your mother-in-law when you were younger as a Makoti. Don't do the same to the Makoti who comes to you. Let's not perpetuate pain. Let's not perpetuate humiliation. Let us stop all the bad habits. We can, if we are aware. First, there is the awareness, of course. People are not aware of what is wrong. We will perpetuate. That's where books come in. That's where talks come in. Even in churches, you go to church and you find the same in some, not all. The same lack of awareness that time has marched on. What may have been practiced 100 years ago, and maybe people tolerate it, doesn't mean it's correct. And to come and tell me, lisiko, it's custom, that is, I don't want to swear in public. That is not right.
Mama. Thank you. Thank you so much, Mama Magona. We are now about time is the real killer. That is the challenge. We are about to give over to Mama Mshope. Her hand is up, but before I do that, just for 1 minute, share some acknowledgements. I've got one person here, an audience member, Nombongo Ngangana, who is saying, Nombongo Ngangana Kebeni, wow, I always feel fired up, always when I listen to Umamtoro. This is what this particular member is saying. The other one is coming from UKZN. It's Zanele Zuma. She's adding on the applause to say the program is great. It has been very educational. Sisanda do, whoa, imfundiso ezingaga. That is the applause. Now I'm going to request Mama Zinashope to open her own video and also her mic so that she can raise the comments or a question. Then Mama Magona will respond. Thank you very much.
Molweni ndiyabulisa, ndibulela kakhulu elithuba loba ndibe khona kule ndawo sibe sidibene kuyo kule nkundla. Ndibulela uSisindiwe Magona, usise nimhlonipha kangaka. Ndimane ndiphinda ndindodwa ndimamele ndithi unendlebe nje unetyala. Umuntu onendlebe unetyala. Zininzi into ezithethwe nguSisindiwe, ndimamele ndiyafunda ngathi ndingene eklasini. Andizange ndibe khona endaweni apho kuthetha khona uSisindiwe ndingamameli, ndingayiva into ayitshoyo. Uthetha upoqo, andazi uba kuthiwa nge-English ke leyo. Uthetha upoqo uSisindiwe, and xa ebeka ngolu hlobo uzama ukusichazela uba xa ngaba unyanisile ngenene into ofuna ukuyenza uyayenzisisa. When you truly want to do something, when you want to teach something good, you do it to the best of your ability. And I respect her for that. It is extremely important for us to take our roles as leaders in the home, leaders in the community, even if it's in your street where you live, make a difference, because children watch more than they listen. It is important, and so we always say, "Sinyathela ngesizotha emhlabeni wokhokho bethu." And Dr. Sindiwe Magona is definitely doing that. She's stepping with a sense of respect and dignity in the land of our ancestors. I'm so grateful for all her writings in both isiXhosa and in English. I am so honored to know her, and I think as a nation we need more amazing women like her, more action than talk. Enkosi kakhulu, siyabulela.
Thank you very much, Mama Tsingamhlope. Now we don't have time. Thank you very much to our keynote speakers. I'm going to hand over to our DVC, Professor Cheryl Foxcroft, who is now going to do the vote of thanks. One link that I can never forget about Prof is that in one of her papers, she talked about the issues of children, the ethics of having children raised in various communities. But she said that there is the flavor. I liked that part. When you are raising children, there is an African flavor which may be different from the international common program. So another woman who is interested in raising children in Africa and in the world. Over to you, Prof, and welcome.
Thank you, and what a privilege we have had this evening to be part of this conversation. And it's almost sad to have to draw this evening to an end. So distinguished guests, to our Vice-Chancellor, Prof. Mutwa, I want to thank all the other members also of the university leadership, our staff and our students from Mandela University who joined this conversation tonight. Especially, I want to say thanks to the DVCs and the executive deans who are present, particularly though our Executive Dean of the Faculty of Education, Dr. Muki Puleng, who co-hosted this conversation, along with the Center for Women and Gender Studies under the leadership of Dr. Babawa Mogokwana. I would also like to acknowledge and thank our Executive Dean of Humanities, Prof. Pamela Maseko, and the Director of Teaching Development, Dr. Nolutando Tony, for being in our midst this evening. Special word of thanks goes to all our guests joining us from other institutions of higher learning, entities, and members from our communities as far afield as international communities. But I'm sure that you will agree with me that the biggest word of thanks this evening must go to our conversationalists, our honorary doctorate recipient, Dr. Sindiwe Magona, and Prof. Puleng Segalo. We are really lost for words and have been moved by your words this evening. It has been a real honor to sit and listen to the contributions and reflections this evening. Prof. Segalo, you've been a wonderful conversationalist host. I can see your psychological skills in getting conversations going and moving. And also thank you for your work in terms of how you've analyzed some of the work of Dr. Magona and how that has provided complexity and relevance to our current generation of scholars today. Dr. Magona, your humility and your authenticity have shone through this evening. I'm always aware that when one is in the presence of great people, you sense that humility and authenticity. And you are truly great in terms of the work that you've done and the person who you are. Interestingly enough, in sharing your stories and your life journey this evening, some of what you've said has connected well with the Learning and Teaching project at Nelson Mandela University. For example, we have revisited the centering of our curriculum and the philosophy that goes with that on a humanizing pedagogy, drawing from the work of Paulo Freire. And in this approach, we then try to centralize the humanity of our students and our staff in the process of knowledge sharing. And that was part of what you were sharing in the conversation, your love for children and their education, and to bring that humanness into education. And our executive dean, Dr. Muhem, actually heads up research into the area of humanizing pedagogy and is published in this field. You also spoke about the need for our children and our children's children to know who they are and what their roots are. And so Dr. Babawa Mugakwana actually heads up the development of a social consciousness and sustainable futures module at our university. This is an interdisciplinary module that grew out of the work really of the Must Fall movement, where there was such a strong call to decolonize the curriculum. And our students actually took the lead in helping us realize that we needed a module such as this social consciousness and sustainable futures module. The course looks at addressing socioeconomic issues, but also looks at students getting to know who they are and what their roots are. And this then interfaces with a knowledge set that can be applied to improve their societies and to change the world. You also mentioned the language. And we have a very interesting language and multilingual project to develop a new language policy. We did so in a very different way. We didn't go to the books and the theories and from our administrative staff to our academics and to our students. And we had conversations with all these different groups at the university to give opportunities to people to share their language stories. And now we are using that to actually develop the policy. And that should mean that we also then have everybody owning the policy when it is approved. And then lastly, much as we focus on developing our students so that they can be all that they can be, we also try to enable our teachers so they are aware of the value of engaging deeply with students and who they are, where they come from, what learnings they bring, and then how we mix that with other things like in COVID-19, we've had to make greater use of technology in learning, and in the process, try to make sure that we don't leave any student behind. In particular, we've got a strong focus on our early career academics to be able to both support them as they continue to pursue their careers and and complete their PhDs, but also to enable them to develop the competencies to teach, to research, to engage. All these projects are central to how we create an engaged teaching approach and academic environment, scholarship across faculties and entities. And we've seen such a wonderful example of this today between the Faculty of Education and the Center for Women and Gender Studies. So these are just some of the ways in which we aim to sustain curriculum that keeps students and staff curious and open to students can constantly grow. To just close off now by thanking firstly to the Executive Dean of Edu, Mrs. Jackie Smith, and Ayanda, our wonderful MC this evening. Then the Center for Women and Gender Studies, Dr. Babawa Mogakwana and her team, Sipikazi Tao, Tembelihle Butelezi, Disa Ubasi, Wendy Adams, and many others. To our ICT support services, communication and marketing team members who have sent this program to the whole world. And lastly, a special thanks to our partner, the National Institute of Humanities and Social Sciences, who have been consistent in supporting conversations such as the one that we have just had tonight at Mandela University. I thank you all for coming.
That was the DVC for Teaching and Learning, Professor Foxcroft. Under the leadership and guidance of the VC, Professor Sibongile Mutwa, I declare this webinar closed. Thank you very much.